As we explore password safety and password cracking, you're going to be creating your own program to check a user's password against a dictionary list of potentially overused passwords. Let's take a look at how the program functions, and then we will begin on actually programming our own version of it. When I hit the green flag, the program asks me to type in my password. So let's say it's something on my overused password list. It's in the dictionary, QWERTY. Press enter, press the check button. It says your overused password is QWERTY. All right, let's try this again. Press the green flag, Mambo. Enter, check. Your password is not overused. You may have also caught that it was cycling through very quickly, checking as to whether or not that word was on the list. So let's go inside the program and examine a little more closely what the layout is and what the associated script is for each area. Notice I have a backdrop. This is just simply a yellow screen with some text noting that this is the Overused Passwords program. And the script associated with it is constructed from a starter event, the green flag, data, this set n to 1, sensing, ask type in your password and wait, and again, data, set password to answer. What we'll need to do as we get started with doing this programming is we will need to create these two variables, n and password. You'll note that they don't appear in the layout because if I click these boxes, they'll show up on screen. I don't want to see their values as the user is operating this particular program. So we will leave them hidden and unchecked. But we do need to make a variable n. This will serve as a counter that allows me to count each of the different words in my overused passwords list, know where I am in the list, and keep track of where I am as I compare the user's entry against these items on the list. Secondly, I need the password because when the user is asked to enter their password, I need to take that answer and put it into a stored variable, which is password. Remember, in Scratch, we don't have to define variable types. The program knows automatically when I set the values, in this case, that n is going to be an integer and that password is going to be a string. So you don't need to worry about those types of declarations in this particular program. However, in data, you will also need to make one more type of variable, and this type of variable is a list. Name that list overused passwords and leave it checked, though, so that we can see it as we're working with the program. In theory, we could uncheck it for the actual use by the user so that they would not see what's in the dictionary passwords. But for now, we'll want to take a look so that we're able to do the comparisons as we're trying out different words. Okay? Now, the next important piece is the check button. What's happening here? Well, let me minimize this window. What's happening on the check button is that I need to compare a user's input, their entry of a password, against the dictionary list of overused passwords. So I will use as a trigger this when this sprite clicked event, and then I will create a control structure using a repeat until. What do I want to repeat? Well, I want to repeat checking the user's input of password against each item in the overused password list one at a time. So I will repeat until the n number, the checkpoint number, 1, 2, 3, 4, etc., exceeds or is greater than the length of the overused passwords list. Now notice this allows me to introduce some level of dynamicism in the length of that list. I don't have to have a static length. I can continue adding words to the overused passwords list, and that length will increase. So no matter how many new words I add, I'll always still be able to check against everything in that list because n will simply have to have gone through every one of those numbers and have exceeded the length before it stops checking. So the repeat until n is greater than length of overused passwords. And what am I repeating? Well, I've got to put in place a control structure that is an if-then-else conditional. If item n of overused passwords, so item 1, item 2, etc., is equal to the password that the user entered, then I will use a say statement to make an announcement. Your overused password is, I'll name that item, and then I'll stop any other scripts in the sprite, because once I have reached a match, I can break out of this particular if then else statement and the repeat structure. However, if I don't find a match, then what I need to do is increment the n value by 1. So change n by 1, and then loop back, and again, check whether or not the next word, item 2 in this case, of overused password matches the user's entry. So if there is ever a match, then we will state that that match has occurred, break out of the script, and we're done. However, if it doesn't occur, we increment up and we continue on until we have exhausted the list, at which point then now we have broken out of the repeat and we move on to this statement. Your password is not overused. Okay? Now, the last piece that we want to include, and I'm going to switch because I don't want to show you the code, is this button, the Add to List button. What do we want to happen here? Well, let's look at its function without showing you the code. If I click Add to List, let me hit the stop sign first to clean it up. Add to the list. Add another overused password to the list. What if it's dog cat? I'll type in the word, press enter, and you'll notice that a 6th list item has been added. Okay? Every time I press add to list, I can add a new word. Okay? Be M and M. And I will continue growing the list so that in theory, as my overused passwords in the world grows and grows, I'm adding more and more information to my dictionary so that if I'm hacking passwords, I will have all of the relevant passwords that I need to check against, all of the things that users are potentially using more of. Okay? For instance, a new reality star celebrity appears on the scene. Everybody starts using their name as a password. I need to introduce that into my password list because that's going to be a reasonable choice, perhaps, for a millennial or a Gen Xer that they would potentially use that type of password. And I'd want to know and have that on my list. Okay? So I'm not going to tell you what that code is, but I want you to think through how you'd write the script. Obviously, we've made a button, and when I clicked that particular sprite, then I was asked for information. All right, how do we do that? We'll go back to this. If we look back at our original script for when I clicked the green flag, I used a sensing tile to ask a question, and whatever the user typed in, that came in as an answer. And then that answer was added as the password. That variable value became the answer. So you'll notice that there's some important tiles under data you need to be aware of when you're working with a list. Not only do you have the name of the list, but you can do things such as add a thing to the overused passwords. So maybe you want to, when you click this sprite and you ask the user for input, whatever they type in maybe needs to then be added to the overused passwords. Okay, so I will leave you with that task of not only constructing the program as I've shown it to you here, and playing with a little bit and looking up the most overused passwords, and then once you have constructed the script for your new button, adding those passwords to the list. Good luck.